En el centro de la pampa vive un pimiento. Sol y viento pa' su vida, sol y viento.
Hello, this is Patrick Barnard. Welcome to the 31st edition of the Pimento Report. We've done a lot of reports in French lately. We're switching over to English, and we're going away from Westmount Park, which is right behind me here, right next door to the borough of Ville-Marie. And we're going to someone who lives in the district of Peter McGill, Mr. Robert Hajaly. We're going to watch him as he goes to council today. We are now walking east from Westmount, moving towards the Peter McGill district. This would be just the edge of Westmount and the beginning of Peter McGill, which is in Ville-Marie and in Montreal. Robert Hajaly works at Dawson College, which is just coming up on the left, a large building, and we're going to try and catch him as he finishes a course late in the afternoon. We're now going into the school. The purpose of this video is to see how a borough council works or does not work. Hi, Rob.
Hi. Not yet. Not yet.
Just need to keep track of everybody here.
Come in.
Robert Hajaly, who studied political philosophy at McGill and Oxford, takes summary notes after every single class to use for the next class he will give. Hajaly is a downtown Montrealer with a passion and has a deep attachment to the city of his birth. But the greater Montreal of today has changed and has a complex threefold structure. There is the main big city. Gérald Tremblay is its mayor. Then there are municipalities such as Westmount, and then boroughs of the big city such as Ville-Marie, of which the Peter McGill district is a part. I started off in Westmount Park, and I said, well, we're just going next door to Ville-Marie, and we're going to follow Mr. Robert Hajaly of the Humanities Department.
All right, okay.
As he goes to the Borough Council meeting of the Borough of Ville-Marie.
Okay.
Now, how often do you do this, Robert? Do you do this every month?
Yes, I try to do it every month, my work permitting, because there's Borough Council meetings once a month, usually on the second Tuesday.
You go for very precise purposes, don't you?
I do indeed, because in Peter McGill District we really lack almost all the basic recreational and civic services. And the point of my going is to ask questions to provoke the borough administration into providing these services. So it is actually quite a serious matter for us.
You're in the district of Peter McGill, which is a district of Ville-Marie. If you had to choose one scene that would represent Peter McGill to people elsewhere in Montreal or perhaps even in the world, which street or scene would you select?
Dorchester Square and Sherbrooke Street. Those are the two grandest features of the district.
What you're seeing right now is Dorchester Square, what used to be known as Dominion Square, right in the downtown core of Montreal, in the borough of Ville-Marie. Montreal's three-tiered political structure, the core, the boroughs, and the municipalities, disperses control. Prior to 2009, the ruling authorities in Montreal cut a deal with the provincial government in Quebec City that resulted in Bill 22, which makes the mayor of Montreal, Gérald Tremblay, simultaneously the mayor of the borough of Ville-Marie. For the 2009 election, a well-known East End politician in Montreal, Sammy Fursillo, was brought to the Ville-Marie borough so he could act as the mayor's second-in-command on that borough council. This structural engineering produces a strange result. On the one hand, the mayor of the big city meets monthly in a very small room for borough council meetings with residents of Ville-Marie, and the atmosphere can be surprisingly face-to-face. On the other hand, the structure is really a chain of executive control, leading straight to Montreal's executive committee. The place for the borough council meetings sometimes shifts, and this evening Robert Hajaly and I are going to an office building right in the center of Montreal near the Berry de Montigny metro station.
Our bus is coming, our train's coming.
Okay, Bob, I have a question for you. We're going east to this borough meeting. You're going really from the western end to to more the center of the borough. Is that what's happening?
That's exactly. It's in the center of the borough. That's
And
right.
do you ask your questions in English or in French?
In English.
Okay.
I'm much more able to do so in English.
Right. And do you feel any reticence about that? Or
No, I do not.
No. And why is that?
Well, the English had a very major role in creating downtown, this borough, this city. Why should I feel any reticence whatsoever?
Okay.
So it's good. I think it's great that they feel like that they get involved more in the city because they have a regular space.
Here is Robert Hajaly talking outside the borough chamber to the activist Derek Robertson of Mobilisation Turco. Derek Robertson is going to bring up the Turco question in the council chamber. Now, it may be that we will not get permission to film, which would be normal.
Yeah.
How
are you?
Find yourself.
All right.
I suspect the mayor might say yes, because he's interesting that way. He's a very political guy. So you're filling out your form now.
Yeah, I am
Do you-
indeed.
I'm pretty sure the mayor will say yes.
Okay, c'est très gentil, merci. So, on your form, do you have to in downtown, you have to indicate what you're going to ask about. Do you have to do the same thing here?
Yes, precisely.
Okay, and that's what you're doing.
That's what I'm doing.
Yeah. Okay, great.
I'm going to ask two questions. One will be about the preservation of the Redpath Mansion, and the other one about the restoration of Rutherford Park as a multi-sport terrain. Those actually two questions. My first question concerns the Redpath Mansion. I know that it has been raised by other people. Now, you know my view that I'm in favor of preserving it if it's possible. I'm not an architect, and I don't know if it is. Still, my question is a very simple one, because you refuse one project, but something has to be done with this building. So it's simply this. I would like to know, and it's not very clear from the answers you gave previously, whether in principle you would favor preserving this building to the extent that it's possible and incorporating it in any future project on this site.
We'll have to see what the promoter wants to do. It's a private property, and as a result of that, we'll see in the weeks to come the options that we have and the decision that will be taken.
Unfortunately, he seems not to want to preserve it. So I'm wondering, supposing he says, I don't want to preserve it, what will your reaction be to that?
We have to evaluate all the options. I want to keep clear mind on, we had a decision to take, we're going to take it tonight.
A number of people besides Hajaly spoke at the meeting about the Redpath Mansion and the need to protect it, principally the representatives of Héritage Montréal. And in fact, there was a resolution passed, 40.12, which refused a permit to demolish and to build to the proprietor of the Redpath Mansion. But perhaps the most important influence in preserving this house, for the moment at least, was the intervention in public only a short time before this council meeting by the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts.
I have one more question, which is on the development of Rutherford Park. You know, I've asked this question before. It is the only sports ground that we have in Peter McGill District. It's in very poor condition and not really usable because it's very uneven. It would actually be maybe perhaps dangerous. I've asked you to develop it. I did receive a letter from Madame Archambault, the Director of Recreation, saying that you had applied for a grant, but that the Minister has said that, this is in November, that there was no program for such grants at present. So my question is simply this: is there any grant now? And if there is no grant forthcoming, let's say in the next few months, would you consider developing it with money from the City of Montreal? Because it is the only field we have in the east part of the city. There are many sport grounds, and you have in fact developed recently, I think, sport terrains in the Habitation Jean Mance and 2 soccer terrains, Delormier and Ontario. We have nothing developed. So my question is there a grant to develop it? If there is not, is there a grant to develop it? If there is not, will you proceed with your money and develop it?
Dominique Archambault is right behind you, so she'll answer that question.
Bonsoir, Monsieur Hajaly. Alors, depuis
What you're seeing here is the head of the Ville-Marie Borough Culture, Sports, Leisure and Social Development Department, Dominique Archambault, talking to Robert Hajaly. And she's giving him a kind of explanation. She's saying that there may be some money from Quebec City, there may be some money from the City of Montreal, and there may be some money from McGill University for the development of Rutherford Park, but that all of this is still very much up in the air. There's a lot of physical face-to-face contact in this small room at the level of the Borough Council. And at one point, in fact, there was something quite funny that happened. Derek Robertson, the man who was there to talk about the Terco and the failure of the mayor really to stick to his position of April, at one point turned to Mr. Fursillo and said, "Sammy, I'm not asking you that question. I'm asking that question of the mayor." So, you have a personal interaction that takes place here. It can be quite surprising. At the same time, the process, the larger process, is very, very controlled. You had two questions tonight, two things you wanted to clarify. What satisfaction did you get?
Not too much. I mean, let's look at the first question, the Redpath Mansion. I want to know whether he's willing to commit himself to preserving and incorporating the mansion in a future development, because something's got to be done with it. And he wasn't really willing to commit himself. You saw it yourself. He pointed out that they did favor preservation of the mansion in the original project, but that's finished now, and he wasn't willing to commit himself for the future project. So I think the only thing we can do is just keep observing what he's doing, keep up the pressure, and that sort of thing. Now, the other issue that I'd asked about, Rutherford Park, that wasn't very satisfactory too, because they said basically the original grant they'd applied for hadn't come through. There's a possibility of getting a new grant from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs, but that's not certain. And I wasn't able to get a commitment that they would spend money on it if they didn't get the grant from Quebec, and that's just something I'm going to have to keep on coming back on. I think it's very much like that you just have to keep on at them if you want to get a result. So I didn't really get the result I wanted tonight, but you know, I mean, it's part of the process. You know, they're aware of your concern, and that's part of it. That they're aware that you're concerned about this, and you're going to follow it up. I think in general he adopts a cautious attitude. For example, take the Redpath. He wasn't willing to deny the Redpath project until the museum came along and gave him some kind of excuse, some kind of cover. He wanted to put it to a local referendum. He wanted to sort of leave it to the residents to decide so that he didn't have to take the responsibility of the decision. And he was criticized for that by the opposition councillors from Projet Montréal and Vision Montréal. And that's, I think, pretty typical of his style. He wants to sort of reduce the extent to which he's out there taking a risk. He's cautious. He doesn't want to create a target for himself. So that's it.
I'd like to ask you a question. It seems to me that in terms of your district and in terms of what you are trying to do, the test of the borough system would be the degree to which you can influence the mayor of your borough, who in this case happens to be the mayor of Montreal. He is the mayor of your borough by special legislation. So if the borough system works, in other words, if it is actually a system of government, then to some degree, if you are right about Peter McGill District being deprived, you should be able to communicate that to him, and that should eventually materialize in concrete political decisions. And if it does not, there's a failure there.
Well, look,
I'm talking about the system now, not the man.
The system, right. The problem with the system is that he didn't get to be mayor of Ville-Marie because we elected him. He got to be mayor of Ville-Marie by legislation because he's mayor of Montreal. And that has a positive point and a negative point. The positive point is that if he wants to act, he has command of all the resources of the city. But the negative point is that he's not directly electorally accountable to the residents of Ville-Marie. He doesn't get to be mayor of Ville-Marie because Ville-Marie voted for him. And so to that extent, it's possible that his sense of electoral accountability to the residents of Ville-Marie is somewhat diminished. Let's say, compared with someone who really is elected by the residents and has to be re-elected. So it's a bit of a, if anything, there's a little bit of a problem there.